Hi, everyone. Happy fall. My hope, as you're going through these readings and the discussion forums, the TED Talks, is that you are learning to apply several new lenses. Number one, to consider the kind of leadership that you've served under, and a lot of you are doing that. Number two, to consider the kind of leader, of course, that you can be or that you hope to be, aspire to be. And number three, to be watching very mindfully everything that's happening around you, whether it be, as I suggested last week, things that are happening on the news, how people are handling things in varying levels of leadership. This is not just upper echelons of leadership, but middle leadership, even lower down the rungs. How are people absorbing things, responding to things? What are they responding out of and why? And how would you respond if you were in that same situation? And as you're reading, whether you read for pleasure, could be fiction, could be, I don't know if you have time for that right now, could be the news that you're pondering, could be, for some of you, as you're reading through the Bible. What examples do you see there? How do you apply some of the concepts that we've discussed, some of the reading that we've been looking through, to what you're reading there? If you go to church, what you're hearing from the pulpit on the Sunday. So not just maybe the delivery of the pastor, but maybe not. Maybe it's actually the content. We are stepping into the New Testament this week, which is really the bulk of this course. And I hope that you will do it with fresh eyes for those of you who've read Scripture before. And if you're not as familiar with Scripture, if you're feeling uneasy about that, please don't. I do encourage all of you, wherever you fall on that spectrum, to consider accessing some outside sources as you step into the New Testament. So there are a couple ways you can do that. Number one is to consider the translation that you're reading. We have a recommended translation on our Foxtail page, on our syllabus. That's a free download or a free internet access that you're welcome to use. I often will read 2, sometimes 3 different translations side by side. So, for example, you might look at the New King James, which is closer to a word-for-word translation than most. Alongside, let's go to the other end of the spectrum, Eugene Peterson published a translation called The Message, which most people find very readable. The reason it's readable is that it's not a word-for-word translation. It's really more of a concept by concept translation. Eugene Peterson worked very hard to take Scripture and put it into the vernacular of really the late 20th century, early 21st century, which is easier to read. Is it always as accurate as one might want it to be? That can be subjective, so just be aware of that. The most mindful way to read Scripture is to read several translations if you have the time and if you have the mind. There are also a variety of books that can help you. One of my favorites is How to Read the Bible Book by Book. If that's something that interests you, in fact, I'll put it in my email to you on Monday so that you'll have the title and the author. It's a very short synopsis of each book of the Bible as you work your way through, and you might find that helpful. There are lots of other resources out there. You can always Google it as passage from Scripture and see what kinds of things come up in terms of web pages or even videos that may be helpful. Don't read it on your own, and don't read it in isolation. We're all here to help you, but boy, the internet is a fabulous resource as well. I look forward to seeing your responses to this week's TED Talk. It's one of my favorites. I hope you have a wonderful week. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. God bless.